Good evening. The regular meeting of the Independent School District 279 School Board is called to order at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, April 16th, 2019. And seated in front of you this evening from my left to your right are Director Jackie Mosqueda-Jones, Director Kelsey Dawson-Walton, Director Jessica Craig, myself, Director Mike Ostafi, Director Tanya Simons, Director Heather Douglas, and Interim Superintendent Dr. James Bulk. So good evening, everybody, and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Director Dawson-Walton, can you start, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, I think all of us would rather be outside in 70 degrees than in here, but we have a lot of things ahead of us this evening. Board members, in front of you is the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? No. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as is?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. And is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The agenda is accepted as is. The next agenda item is the audience opportunity to address the school board. And I will read a card here. During audience opportunity to address the school board, I will call on each speaker who has submitted a speaker card. And we ask that speakers keep their comments to 3 minutes. The board does not take action or discuss matters during this portion of the meeting. Speakers may be referred to the superintendent or staff if follow-up is necessary. The complete guidelines for public participation are provided on the meeting materials table and on the school board section of the district website. And when I call your name, please come to the microphone, state your topic, and also state whether or not you are a district resident. So with that, we will start with Ms. Tina Collins.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start off by thanking the board for allowing me to speak on a topic that's very dear to my heart. My name is Tina Collins. I'm a parent of 2 students in our district, and I'm also an employee of District 279, and I'm also a resident of the area. I wrote a letter earlier in March to the board, and in that I identified myself as a non-special education ESP. I'm going to read because I can't remember everything. I do, however, work with them in many different scenarios during my day, where I get to see the difference they make in a child's day-to-day, hour-to-hour, and at times even minute-to-minute struggles. These compassionate people help our children during transitions from classroom to special activities such as music and physical education, assemblies, fire and safety drills, even lunch and recess. At lunch and recess, they are invaluable in not only helping to keep our most vulnerable students fed and safe, but they are extra eyes, hands, and guidance outside on the playground areas. Our school playfields are large and spread out. One recess ESP for every 100 children is all that schools are mandated to provide. This is also all the funding that is provided for recess ESP positions per se. For our larger schools, this is a huge safety issue. This, in part, is one of the roles I assume every day at my school. I can do only what I am capable of doing with the tools and support I am given. Without the extra special ed ESP support at recess, I cannot do everything I am supposed to do to make sure all of our children are safe, valued, nurtured, and most of all, heard. Our special education ESPs also assist in many ways within the principal classroom setting. In the classrooms, none of our children can learn to their fullest potential if special needs children have no support during mainstreamed class times. Our special ed ESPs also lend a hand if they can to help any child who may be struggling in any way while in that classroom. Yes, our special ed kids are pulled back into the special ed classrooms for targeted learning on core subjects that many of our special kids, but many of our special needs kids are of average to above intelligence that may have other issues where they need help. We have many students who need help learning coping skills when frustrated or angry, Our ESPs know what our children need, sometimes before the children themselves even realize it. Our ESPs put their heart and soul into working and advocating for these children. As a career choice, this is not a glamorous job or one that pays well. It is a labor of love for all of us. Many of our ESPs are single parents, and they count on this for their family's livelihood. By losing hours, they are losing much-needed income, and for some, the only benefits that their families are able to afford. If our dedicated ESPs cannot provide for their families, we will lose them. We are sitting on a $72 million nest egg. We can afford approximately $500,000 a year to keep our numbers as they are. I think this is just a vital need. We cannot afford to lose our ESPs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Next up, Sarah Detman.
My name is Sarah Detman, and I'm a resident of Brooklyn Park. Thank you, Board, for listening and letting me speak to you today. I am writing as a mother of a child with autism and ADHD. This journey started when Jake was 3.5, and I felt that he wasn't speaking as many words as he should. So I brought Jake into the Osseo School District to be assessed. They did the educational assessment and diagnosed him on the autism spectrum. He was able to start his services immediately, and within a month, he was making eye contact, speaking to literally anybody on the playground that would listen to him. I tell you from the bottom of my heart that staff that assisted Jake with his early education are miracle workers. He was talking more, he was playing more, and he was making friends. He sprouted to an amazing preschooler and now a 13-year-old at Brooklyn Middle School with his amazing team and support of his special ed staff. He is thriving. He feels comfortable in his classroom knowing that he has the support he needs to be a successful student. When I asked Jake what he would do if he lost his friend in the classroom, he said that he would not want to leave that school. I truly believe that we are failing our students if we don't give them the support that they need and they don't feel comfortable in their classroom. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Devon. Okay, there are no other cards, so we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Bauk.
Regular part of the report is to share district points of pride. So tonight I've asked our cabinet members, we have a number of them, so they're going to work through them real quickly and then we'll go from there. So cabinet members, please.
Good evening. In the category of Achieving Dreams, for the 11th year in a row, Osseo Area Schools has earned a Best Communities for Music Education designation from the NAMM Foundation. This honor acknowledges school districts that maintain music education as a part of their core curriculum. Osseo Area Schools is the only district in Minnesota to receive this recognition every year since 2009. 9 teams of students from Osseo Area Schools competed at the Minnesota Destination Imagination State Tournament on March 23rd. At state, 3 Osseo teams qualified to compete at the DI Global Finals in Kansas City next month. Congratulations to the 6 Smarties and Super 7 Sensations from Rush Creek Elementary and the Gentlemen Boys from the Maple Grove Middle School for punching their tickets to Global Finals.
Maple Grove Senior High's Kara Subversal earned a silver key for her sculpture, Thoughts and Prayers, in the National Scholastic Art and Writing Competition. In addition, Annika Dahl, Gabrielle Perkins, and Mia Prescott from Maple Grove Senior High, and Kendall Potratz and Lindy Ojiri from Osseo Senior High had artwork displayed at the National K-12 Ceramic Exhibition in Minneapolis at the end of March. Our next category is Contributing to Community. Gratitude was the theme of the month for March at Rice Lake Elementary, culminating with the Gratitude Gathering on March 22nd. At this event, students recognized parents and community volunteers, as well as some district staff members, and sang the song, "We Are Grateful" to guests.
For their final school-wide service project of the year, students at Cedar Island Elementary School made fleece blankets for the Animal Humane Society and Secondhand Hounds on March 22nd. This project was made possible thanks to a District 279 Foundation grant. And in the category of lifelong learning, last month, engineers from community partner Boston Scientific shared their expertise with students at Brooklyn Middle STEAM School during a brown bag lunch event. Held throughout the school year, these events give Brooklyn Middle scholars the opportunity to further explore STEM-related topics and learn from local professionals.
Under the category of mission-driven employees, Elizabeth Wald, talented and gifted teacher from Edenbrook and Elm Creek Elementary Schools, is a recipient of the Educator of Excellence Award from the Minnesota-based nonprofit Best Prep. Wald has used Best Prep's The Stock Market Game for many years to teach students about business, career, and financial literacy. Of the 600-plus teachers who participated in Best Prep programs annually, only 2% are recognized with the Educator of Excellence Award each year. And finally, the Association of School Boards Officials International has once again recognized Osseo area schools with a Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. This award reflects the district's commitment to transparency and high-quality financial reporting. Osseo area schools has earned this award every year since fiscal year 1990.
And I'd just like to add, I'd like to thank the staff and students and community members who have positively contributed to accomplishing our district mission. So hats off to them. And that's all I have this evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Next agenda item are the school board reports, and we will start with Director Craig on the April 9th, 2019 Policy Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The School Board Policy Committee met at the ESC at 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 9th, 2019. Board members Jessica Craig, Heather Douglas, and Jackie Mosqueda Jones attended. Also attending were Superintendent Jim Buck, Director of School Community Relations Barbara Olson, Coordinator of Information Systems Gerald E. Edwards, and Tim Palmatier, General Counsel. During the meeting, the committee reviewed Policy and Procedure 515, Protection and Privacy of Educational Records. The committee also reviewed Appendices A through J of Policy 515. The committee recommended revisions to the policy, which are being presented for the first reading during tonight's meeting. The next Policy Committee meeting is scheduled to be held at the ESC on Tuesday, May 14th, 2019 at 4:30 p.m. Policy Committee meetings are open to the public and community members are encouraged to attend.
It's an awesome time. You should come.
Thank you, Director Craig. Next up are two presentations. First is the District Planning Advisory Councils, or DPAC, their final report and recommendations, and will Jeremy Wiley and Joe Leslie please come forward.
Good evening, school board members, Interim Superintendent Bach, cabinet members, and members of the viewing audience. My name is Jeremy Willey, and I'm the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Educational Standards for Osseo Area Schools. I'm delighted to be here tonight with our DPAC committee to share with you our work and our recommendations for the 2019-2020 school year. DPAC is an acronym for the District Planning Advisory Council. And this committee is made up of very dedicated members that meet on a regular basis and then conclude the year with recommendations to the school board and superintendent for consideration. I have had the privilege of being able to work with this group in my capacity as the director of CIS. And throughout this time, I've had the opportunity to work closely with Marty Cohen, chair of the District Planning Advisory Council. It is my sincere pleasure to introduce you to him at this time to continue with our presentation this evening. Marty.
Thank you, school board. Thank you, members of the audience, people of the community that are out there. DPAC, let me get my thing here. Membership of DPAC consists of parents, guardians, community members, senior high students, teachers, district representatives, and a school board member. This year, we did have participation from 11 schools. We had 3 students and 2 community members and 1 school board member that participated in our group. This year, we decided to change the way we worked. We worked as a large group instead of engaging in traditional practices of meeting in isolated subcommittees. The rationale behind this change in practice was that we wanted to create a space in which stakeholders could entertain the perspectives of larger number of individuals as meetings occurred throughout the year. At the onset of the school year, the committee engaged in various activities to discuss potential recommendations. And we focused on, our learning occurred around world's best workforce legislation. The two goals that we set for the year were each student is ready for college and/or career. The achievement gap is closed on all state mandated measures. Next, the committee engaged in various learning experiences as speakers from various district representatives spoke on topics such as multilingual learners, counseling support at school sites, career and college readiness, 21st century skills, personalized learning, recruitment and retention efforts in our district, a wide plethora of topics. Finally, the committee worked collaboratively to identify priority recommendations and begin drafting recommendations to support existing priority work, as well as focus on ongoing conversations throughout the season. We offer continued support for this priority work and interested in seeing the work continue in the future. The purpose, of course, is to report what we learned throughout the year. We want to report our findings and recommendations to the entire community, and we're always looking for more members. So any school out there that's not on the list, we're more than happy to take members from you because we love people's voices. The first recommendation that we have is that the district expand comprehensive student support services for students, and for that I'm asking Jill Lene to speak for us.
Thank you, Marty. Good evening, school board, cabinet, Superintendent Bauk. We did have a committee member that was ready to share their insight on this recommendation, but they were not able to attend today. So I'm going to speak to it. So I'm just going to talk about a little bit of research. So we all know that children with greater social emotional competence are more likely to be ready for college, succeed in their careers, have positive relationships and better mental health, and become engaged citizens. We also know that school-based interventions aim at reducing incidence of mental health problems, promote positive behavior change, and reduce the need for later intensive and costly interventions. And finally, students learn best when their physical, mental, emotional, and other needs are met. So our strategies for improvement, we have 4. One, we'd like to really look at increasing counseling support district-wide to more closely align with the American School Counselor Association, otherwise known as ASCA standards. We'd also like to create systems and structures in student services to more efficiently and effectively respond to varying academic, social, emotional, and college and career-related needs of students. C, we would provide additional support with college preparedness and life skills that would align with the ASCA and Minnesota World's Best Workforce Statute requirements. And the final recommendation or strategy for improvement, we'd like to continue to actively seek qualified counselors of color for employment within Osseo area schools. Thank you.
Our second recommendation is that we recommend that the district increase enrichment opportunities and differentiated instruction for students. And I'd like to introduce Rose to discuss that topic and her personal story.
Good evening, school board. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Rose Tun, and I served as a community member on DPAC for this school year. I'd like to share the perspective of DPAC with respect to expanding enrichment opportunities in our district. Our district has established some basic programs to provide enrichment and differentiated instruction for students. However, for a district of this size, we have found it surprising that families must sometimes head outside the district to meet the needs of their children. For example, we have a gifted ed program, TAG, with a great stated mission. However, staffing and access to its services are limited. Some families are seeking dedicated gifted education programming out in other districts. Others are being referred to alternate curricula to meet the needs of their students, and cost and transportation are barriers to these opportunities. We have a great start on enrichment activities. Like we saw in the Points of Pride tonight, Destination Imagination. District teams have won top honors. However, access is not equitable across the sites. One of our DPAC members started a private Destination Imagination Club to serve the students at a school where it was not available. The district has also established some great STEM opportunities for students. We have an award-winning STEM elementary school, Beaver Lake. However, there is limited capacity and high demand for this school, as evidenced by the lottery system and long wait lists. We believe that our district has a great foundation in place around enrichment and differentiation, and we see a great opportunity for the school board to expand on this. Thank you.
Our third recommendation is that the district increase world language opportunities for students, and I'd like to present Magali to discuss that topic.
Hi, we live in a globalized world which values a person that can communicate with others. This is the reason why learning another language is very important and a great tool when it comes to create competitive students. We must increase world language for all students. Language is also the key to culture, and expanding the knowledge of our own benefits our social and emotional life. Taking this into account and that this district is putting emphasis on equity, it was unpleasant to know that this right has been denied to students just because of their last name. When a Hispanic student chooses to take Spanish class in middle schools, parents should not have to make an extra effort so their sons or daughters can take this class. It is their right. And if they do, please come with better excuses than the one that they already know the language when no test was done to prove this. Or that they should wait to take Spanish for natives when they reach high school. They shouldn't wait. This district is falling behind other districts in this area, and doing the minimum required by the state cannot be tolerated anymore, because learning another language is no longer just a hobby, but a necessity. At this moment, you have the opportunity to really make a change, and just don't put nice words in the district for sure, but also the district must expand the language department for all students. Thank you.
Our fourth recommendation is that we recommend that district create a comprehensive multi-tiered system of support, MTSS, across all sites. And to discuss this topic will be Angie.
A multi-tiered system of support refers to a comprehensive framework that encompasses both the academic and social-emotional components of a student's learning pathway. MTSS supports academic achievement and growth while also focusing on behavior, social, emotional, and attendance needs of each learner in our district. MTSS focuses on the whole child, which creates a culture of collective responsibility in our schools to ensure that each student receives what is needed when it is needed. Fundamental to that strong MTSS framework is adult collaboration. And as staff and teachers in our system work in collaborative teams, they develop that shared knowledge of student needs. This shared knowledge really helps educators develop preventative and proactive systems and structures to support that continued student success and safety. Another benefit of MTSS is that it creates a system of communication which includes students, educators, and families as equal partners in the process. This recommendation includes 6 strategies, and that implementation of those strategies would occur over the next 3 years as we effectively learn how to design and deliver these necessary layers of support. The full outline of the strategies is included in your board materials. However, elements of those strategies include providing professional development on the components of an effective MTSS framework for our staff at both the elementary and secondary levels, creating a common rubric in which schools and teams can self-assess both their site readiness and their structural readiness for this kind of framework, strengthening core instruction and determining common screening, diagnostic, and progress monitoring tools district-wide, developing consistency with which assessments are administered across the district and how that data is collected, recorded, and considered when identifying students for additional services, and then also creating job-embedded professional learning to really model that problem-solving process to support teachers in determining next steps for our students. MTSS tightly aligns with the other 3 recommendations that were offered previously here this evening, as it focuses on the whole child in order to really create those healthy and equitable spaces where our kids can thrive.
And Jeremy will now discuss the next section.
Our final 2 recommendations are recommendations that are aligned to existing priority work in Osseo area schools. Deepak, in making these 2 recommendations, wants to show its support for this work and see it continue in the future.
Recommendation number 5, we recommend that the district standardize hiring practices and enhance recruitment efforts. This effective staff recruitment and retention practices will build toward a workforce that reflects the demographics of enrolled students. There's nothing more challenging for a teacher that's probationary to be in a position in their first 3 years being told, you're laid off until next year when we might have a position for you, and yet there is a position, and you just wonder, what is that teacher thinking? Should they go find another job somewhere else, and we lose that opportunity at that good teacher? So that's just one little story that I happen to know about, and I'm sure there are many more that discuss that topic in more detail. The next recommendation will be discussed by Jill. We recommend the district create a respectful and equitable community.
So we feel like this recommendation already ties to some priority work that we're already focused on. Specifically, all sites will engage in the use of culturally responsive instructional strategies, and also our priority work around PBIS, restorative practices, and trauma-informed practices. So I think the Deepak team members understand that this is already priority work in process, but they feel very passionate about it. So they just kind of wanted to reiterate the importance of this work. So now at this time, we'll open it up to any questions you may have.
I do believe, as you stated, we are already doing substantial work in the last 2 pieces of the recommendations, number 5 and number 6, and your recommendation was to continue along that line. So we've invested a lot of time and effort and money over the last several years towards those goals. I didn't necessarily see any report out on the efficacy of that, but I do know that that is continues to be a major point of effort for the board and for the school district.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a quick question in regards to recommendation number 3. What were the specific strategies or ideas behind that recommendation?
I think we talked about a number of different potential options, and really it seems like somewhat of a global recommendation, but really what it encompasses, as Magali referenced, looking at ways that we could potentially expand some of our native speaking world language courses beyond the high school and potentially embed them at the middle level. We also spoke about what the extent to which we could examine implementing or creating additional world language opportunities at earlier levels, whether it be upper elementary or at the middle level. So there were just a myriad of topics that we talked about, all of which I think were related to trying to provide kids with more opportunity to engage in different languages and enjoy that type of learning. So,
Okay, thank you.
does that help?
Yep, thank you.
I'd like to just say I really appreciate the spirit of the inclusivity with the Deepak Committee. I think it is really forward-thinking, a lot of the recommendations, and I think they're the recommendations that really have the potential to move our district in a direction that is cutting edge and that we inspire to be, and it really brings our mission to life. So I just want to thank everybody that's been on the committee and all the work. And I will help with your recruitment strategies if you want more people. But I really do. I think this work is really important, especially as we look at the future of our strategic plan moving forward.
I once read a line that said, 1 year of learning occurs for any student, and the challenge comes when you've got a student that's 1 or 2 or 3 years behind. How do you take that student and get them moving forward? We have opportunities in our district. If you look, we didn't cite all of the statistics, but we know that there are schools that are struggling in reading and math and science based on standardized testing. And some of our concerns rely around, if we continue to do the same thing over and over and over again, we will continue to get the same results. And one of the other frustrations that came out this year is we've seen some of these same recommendations in prior years' work. So we hope that some additional work can be done to promote some of these concerns and activities and bring us to the district of Minnesota. We hope to close the achievement gap so we aren't the widest in the nation. We know that we've got some opportunities and we all recognize it. We just don't have all the answers. We need your help in that area.
Being the liaison to the Deepak Committee, I just want to express that it's been an amazing experience to observe the passion and the interest from all of the stakeholders, from community members to parents, and I just really appreciate the work that's been put into this along the way. And even though I only saw it from January onward, I know that a lot of study went in, and a lot of speakers to help inform the recommendations that you brought forward tonight. So thank you, and continue the great work into the next year.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just had a couple of questions.
Yes.
On the first recommendation, there were some sub-recommendations, I think 3 or 4 of them. Will we get a copy of the other recommendations, the more specific things, for each of the main recommendation categories so we can more closely look at and evaluate them?
We can work on something like that for you. Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that would be great, because
What
some
are
of
our
the ideas are
staffing
really great.
parameters in relation to ASCA recommendations and?
Yeah, that would be really nice. And then I had another question about recommendation number 3, specifically the world language opportunities for students. It sounds like, and I just want a little bit of clarification, I guess, that we're talking about both students who are already native speakers of other languages to have more opportunities, but also for other students who are not native speakers to gain opportunities. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. And I wanted to say thank you to all of Deepak for your amazing work. And I hope that we'll see a flyer come out for recruiting more members soon. Yeah? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Directors, any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the CIS presentation on our elementary math curriculum implementation. And once again, Mr. Willie will present.
Good evening. It's an honor to be with you again. You know, I thought about introducing myself again, but I thought,
we missed
boy,
you.
Yeah, that
so long.
sounds somewhat awkward, so we're just going to go with it. But I will tell you, it is an absolute honor to be here tonight to talk about our outstanding new elementary math curriculum resource, Bridges in Mathematics. With me tonight are Robin Gonzalez, our elementary curriculum coordinator, our 5 elementary staff development and assessment specialists, who will introduce themselves to you momentarily, 2 of our elementary math pilot teachers who will be speaking with you this evening, and in the audience are a few more of our elementary math pilot teachers who participated in this process throughout the year last year. The outcomes of our presentation are to revisit the curriculum resource selection process for elementary math, to learn about resource implementation, related professional learning, and ongoing support provided to teachers and leaders, and review how implementation is currently being and will be evaluated. First, let me set the context for our work. In the summer of 2015, Assistant Superintendent Kelly Parpart tasked the Department of Curriculum, Instruction, and Educational Standards with initiating the program improvement process for elementary math, given the unsatisfactory student achievement results she observed in elementary math. Our work then, for the 2015-16 school year, was to carefully examine elementary math student achievement and engage in a review of current educational research related to this content area. Two of the most critical pieces of research that were reviewed were Principles to Actions from the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics and Mathematical Mindsets by Joe Bowler, a professor at Stanford University. After an analysis of this research, the Elementary Staff Development Assessment Specialist team worked to prepare a systemic plan for professional development in the area of mathematics. Beginning then in 2016-17, the formal work around examining various curriculum resources for elementary math began, and Robin Gonzalez will take you through that process.
Good evening.
Good evening.
During the 2016-17 school year, a group of stakeholders, including equity teachers, digital learning specialists, staff development assessment specialists, and curriculum leaders, reviewed 9 math resources using a comprehensive assessment rubric. The 3 curriculum resources with the highest ratings on this rubric were identified to present to teachers in the 2017 April System Staff Development. All elementary classroom teachers had the opportunity to evaluate lessons from the 3 math programs and select the 2 resources that they felt would best meet their students' needs. Using the information gained from the teacher reviews, Everyday Math and Bridges in Mathematics were selected to be piloted in the 2017-2018 school year. 64 elementary teachers volunteered and were selected to be part of the year-long elementary math pilot. 34 teachers piloted Bridges in Mathematics and 30 teachers piloted Everyday Math. All 17 elementary sites were represented in the pilot, and all grade levels from across the district were represented. Pilot teachers met monthly to share their experiences with the 2 curriculum resources and learn about best practices in math instruction. Each month, pilot teachers completed evaluations on the resources that they were using and shared their students' progress. At the end of the pilot process, the teachers voted for the program they felt would best support student learning. The vote was 57-7 in support of Bridges in Mathematics. So in order to prepare for the implementation of the new math materials for the 2018-19 school year, 595 pre-K through 5th grade classroom teachers, special education teachers, and intervention teachers attended a full day of in-service provided by Bridges in Mathematics trainers this past August. And online courses were also created by the Elementary Staff Development Assessment Specialists with the intent of supporting teachers who are new to the district and also supporting other staff who would like to learn more about the Bridges curriculum. To this date, 15 teachers have completed the 7-hour long computer class. Laura Wagaman will discuss the ongoing staff development that teachers have received to support the implementation of Bridges in Mathematics this year.
Throughout the 2018-2019 school year, the Staff Development Assessment Specialists provided ongoing professional development via monthly meetings to support Bridges implementation. Each month, teachers were surveyed prior to the meetings at their site to identify successes and challenges within the implementation. These results were then utilized to differentiate training for the needs at their buildings. Teachers also had the opportunity to collaborate with team members during these meetings. On system-wide staff development days, we have focus sessions that support the math implementation and provided opportunities to work with teachers who piloted Bridges last year. ESPs also have had the opportunity to engage in Bridges training throughout the school year. Next, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Ryan Bisson, to talk about implementation evaluation.
Thank you. Good evening. Building principals, alongside staff development, assessment specialists, and other school leadership, are visiting classrooms throughout this year to monitor Bridges in Mathematics implementation using a fidelity checklist. For a new resource to be successful, we needed to make certain that the teachers had the training and support to implement the program with fidelity. We used a similar model to support our literacy curriculum implementation. The information from these observations will help us focus future staff development and support at the teacher level, site level, and system level. As student achievement data from the high-stakes assessments become available this spring, we will carefully analyze this data to assess student progress and proficiency. These assessment results are only a part of the picture. Research says that it may take 3 to 5 years to fully implement a curriculum, and our approximately 600 elementary teachers have been learning Bridges in mathematics while teaching for the last 7 months. Next, I would like to introduce my colleague, Wynn Sanders.
Good evening. Thank you, Ryan. Tonight we have 2 elementary teachers who are part of the Math Pilot. They're here to share some of their experiences around implementing Bridges in Mathematics this year. First, we have Michelle Kennedy, who is a kindergarten teacher at Fair Oaks Elementary.
Thanks, Wynn. What I appreciate most about the Bridges curriculum is that it gives each of my students access to contribute as mathematicians in our classroom. The activities and materials allow students to be successful at their own level. This means that all students can participate, and they do, and they enjoy it, and so does their teacher. Bridges is structured so that my students are learning from each other, which we know is another way to make learning more meaningful for our students and not just director instruction. My students, see, that's what happens when you don't just read what's on your card. Sorry about that. My students are learning through powerful collaboration, and they're becoming problem solvers with confidence. Using Bridges, I've noticed an increase in student engagement and also their vocabulary development. Over half of my students are English language learners, and I'm blown away by how well they're able to explain their thinking and their strategies. I love listening to them during their workplaces, when they're playing games, and they're using their math vocabulary all on their own with their peers. So as I begin to wrap up another year of teaching with Bridges, I just have to tell you that I can say I am confident that I have all the tools to help my students develop strong number sense in kindergarten. Thank you for listening.
We also have here with us Sharon Risco, who is a 3rd grade teacher at Rush Creek Elementary, here to share some of her experiences with implementing Bridges in Mathematics.
Hello. Like she said, my name is Sharon Risco, and I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Rush Creek Elementary School. I was able to be part of the pilot process last year using the Bridges materials, and I was sold on the curriculum and teaching strategies pretty early on. And I was thrilled that Bridges was selected to be our new math program. One thing I was really looking for as I piloted the program were materials that were challenging for our top students, but still good for all students. My class last year, and again this year, has many students achieving at very high levels, and I find them to be challenged every day. Many of my students even tell me that math is their favorite subject. I found a true test last year to be the MCA and MAP tests that our 3rd graders take. I was so proud of my students for their amazing results on both tests. Thank you.
With that, I'd like to thank you for your participation in our presentation this evening. On behalf of all of the elementary math pilot teachers and the team in CIS, I'd like to publicly thank you, the school board, for your ongoing continued support of the work that we have engaged in around elementary math. We sincerely appreciate all you've done for us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board members, any questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. So for the pilot year, did those classrooms piloting the Bridges program see different testing outcomes relative to their peer set? I think it was mentioned in
what Ms. Risco said, that it sounded like your class had seen improvement. So is that something that you can speak to?
I think the way that I would speak to that is, even in thinking about the 34 total teachers that piloted Bridges, one of the things that Robin and I have been careful to think about is, of those 34, only a fraction of those teachers were 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers. So a good half, if not more, of that group were not assessed by some of these standardized measures. I think we saw excellent results in a number of different places. Sharon's were amazing. But we're excited to see what the future holds. I think Ryan referenced it in the presentation. You know, we want to honor the fact that teachers haven't been in front of this material for more than 8 months, and yet we're going to pay close attention to what happens from a student achievement lens this spring and into the immediate future. And as a department, we're going to do whatever we can to provide the support that teachers need to be successful in delivering this resource with kids. So that's our approach.
Great. Mr. Chair.
Yes. Greg?
Jeremy, I have a question for you. You said that 34 teachers are piloting the program, and we have 15 teachers that have completed the online course. Is there a plan moving forward to getting all those teachers running the pilot through the online support?
Okay, so that's a good question. So we had, and maybe we didn't make this clear enough, so I'll take a step back in time from a chronological standpoint. So the pilot happened last year, and during that time, the people that were engaged in that pilot were piloting both Bridges and Everyday Math simultaneously. At the conclusion of that pilot, when we made the decision to move forward with Bridges then, one of the things that we wanted to do was provide comprehensive staff development for every elementary teacher in August before they even were in front of students. So that is the effort that Robin and her team referenced with respect to providing teachers with that full day experience in August. The subsequent professional development then has been a direct result of feedback that we've received from teachers through surveys on a monthly basis. That's really allowed us to not only provide global professional development around some of the needs that we're seeing across all sites, but also tailor some of that instruction and that support based on the individual needs of individual teachers at specific sites.
Thank you. Yeah,
You're welcome.
That support is key, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
Could you speak to how we will evaluate and look at the transition from Bridges to middle level math learning and making sure that our students are gaining all the knowledge that they need before they head into those middle years? With this program?
With our secondary curriculum coordinator sitting in the audience, it's funny that you should mention that. One of the things that we're talking about for the immediate future, perhaps this fall, if not beyond, is exploring a secondary math pilot, where we would look at two different resources, much like we did at the elementary level, but knowing and understanding that the nuances around secondary and how they become much more course specific, starting in middle school and then moving into high school, would be something that we want to really examine. I think, to answer your question, I think our 5th grade teachers are incredibly concerned about those results, and I think that's because they care so much. Just in my experience as a 5th and 6th grade teacher and an elementary principal, I know that teachers that are at the highest level of the elementary setting want to do whatever is within their power to set kids up to be successful for their next experience. With that said, I believe very strongly that the 2+ years of professional development that we've provided all of our elementary teachers to set them up to be successful with this change will help build a new, a more expansive, and perhaps a more refined skill set in each of our students that will set them up to be successful at the secondary level. So as far as specifically, I think we're going to have to start figuring out ways that we can monitor some of those pieces as students progress through our system. And so I think that that's an important question for us to continue considering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I had a comment. You know, as a parent, I have 2 daughters who have this curriculum now, and my oldest daughter didn't. And I would say that in terms of our family, there's a lot more parental engagement when they bring home the workbooks and the activities. And so I've seen a different an interest in them with math, and I think that's really, really important. I think that as you measure all of this, I think one of the, things our board, it keeps coming up a lot is this parent engagement in all of our different areas. And I think this is a really great way to really engage the families, especially in the curriculum that our students are having in the class each day.
Thank you.
So you covered a little bit of what I was going to ask, which was specifically, what did we do to train parents in this and to get them involved? I mean, this sounds like anecdotal that your daughter's interested, they bring it home, but what are we doing proactively, or what did we do proactively to engage parents in this new curriculum?
I think there are some communication components that are embedded within the curriculum resource that I think teachers across our system choose to utilize in different ways. Some send home print materials, others share those materials electronically. I know that as the parent of 2 elementary children that engage in Bridges, I get those materials as well. But I think, in fairness to parents, I think for them, giving them a space to learn a new curriculum resource is something for us to be mindful of as well. To Kelsey's point, I know that when I was thinking about when I was engaging with my kids with Bridges for the first time, I was realizing very quickly that we were talking and thinking about math in new and different ways. And I also noticed that there were some embedded rigorous challenge that were providing my children with some difficulty, which I was excited about. But I think this will be something that as teachers and as system leaders get more comfortable with the resource, they'll be able to, and haven't had an opportunity to experience it for an entire year, I'm hopeful that they'll continue to expand in their ability to speak about Bridges and the impact that it can potentially have on kids. But short of the embedded resources within Bridges, I can't think of anything beyond that we've done to help provide additional information to parents. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of a number of different sites. Fernbrook Elementary is an example where a couple of our pilot teachers spent time at a PTO meeting sharing their experience with their curriculum resource for parents, and the feedback that I received from parents in that group was extremely positive. So I think sites have taken measures to address that as well, but that's something that we can continue to think about moving forward as well.
I just have a question on that. How are we engaging our non-English speaking parents if the resources are being sent home in English, or are they being sent home in other languages as well?
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that there's accessibility in English and in Spanish. So those are the 2 pieces. Beyond that, that would be something that we would need to start thinking about.
Yeah, and as a parent, I have noticed that the communication that gets sent home is much more thorough than previous years, so it's a definite improvement.
So I also had a follow-up question to Director Simon's comment or question regarding the results. So we have some results this year, and we know what we're looking for. It's a pilot year. And as you stated earlier, you're expecting, up to a 5-year implementation period. So over that period, as our teachers become more proficient, as the kids come into the curriculum and start building from K and 1 and 2 and onward, what are the milestones and what are the specific measurable goals that we are going to say that this was successful and we need to continue, or it's not and we need to reassess and fix? So what are those goals and what are the plans for that? Is it a 5% increase in performance, 10% every year? How did we do that?
Sure. I don't think we've spoken about specific percentage increases as of yet. That's not to say we won't engage in that conversation. I think we're all incredibly excited to get those baseline results and see what they tell us about the first year of implementation. I think the other focus that we have is that we really want to make sure that teachers are successful with their implementation of all of the various components of the resource. So that's kind of that's an additional measurement piece, a qualitative metric that will be happening simultaneously alongside those student achievement results that we'll be wanting to pay close attention to with our building leaders so that we can ensure that we provide them with as much support as possible. But the whole reason we started this process was because our student achievement results were flat, if not declining. So the only expectation that we've ever talked about in CIS is those results improving and improving as quickly as we can. And that's why we've taken such a strategic approach to providing as much comprehensive professional development on the front end, because we want to set teachers up, again, to be as successful from the beginning as they can. and also providing them with the grace and space to get used to something that's just such a departure from what they've experienced for the past decade plus. So,
5 years down the road, when we look back and we see what's success? Is it a 10% improvement over our typical scores? Is it 6? Is it 25? What are we looking at? If we don't have a goal, we're never going to reach it. So how do we define those goals, or do we need to get involved and define those goals as we move forward?
Yeah, I think that will be something that we'll continue to need to discuss within the Division of Leadership, Teaching, and Learning, just to make sure that as our assistant superintendents work with all 17 of our elementary principals, we're all on the same page with what those goals are and what our expectations are for those improvements. I know that site leaders will be carefully examining this data as they continue to engage in their school improvement planning process, which they do every summer and every fall with site-level leadership teams. But you're right, I'd like to see improvement happen as quickly as possible, and I think it would be good for us to determine a specific measurement point of success so that we can really take a targeted approach to trying to reach that goal.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mike, first, as you know, we need to get through and have a base data year first.
Oh, yeah, no, I acknowledge it.
And you acknowledge that, but we get that and then we can go from there and determine, did they improve from our previous curriculum and what's happened in the classroom? Then start taking a look, and maybe it's a conversation with neighboring schools that have also implemented bridges to see what kind of growth they've had across their demographics in their districts, so that we set reasonable targets. I know one thing you said, Mike, sometimes we set this huge target that, we all look at and go, my gosh, we can never get there. And instead of being more incremental over time and being more reasonable. So, again, my response is, let's see what the results are this year. Let's give them some time to analyze that as teachers and as buildings. And then, Jeremy and his group can come back a year from now and say, given this first year and given what other districts have experienced, this might be some, reasonable targets that we can hit to increase that proficiency across all the demographics in our district. So, patience.
Yep. And Jim, thank you for that clarification. I would echo the comments in terms of understanding what our success criteria is, and that's a combination of the quantitative as well as qualitative. And with that, it sounded like you did quite a bit of it in terms of the rollout and getting teacher input and continuing to enhance the professional development. And with going into year 2, are you continuing this level of support, or will support look different for professional development going into year 2?
I would imagine that we'll continue to provide ongoing support. I think one of the things that we're excited about is looking at the initial set of data that we've been working on collecting on these classroom walkthroughs that our staff development assessment specialist team have been engaging in classrooms with our leaders and with the assistant superintendents, so that we can engage in conversations with leaders around where are there places where it's being implemented with the highest level of success, and where are there gaps that exist that we need to address as quickly as possible through a staff development lens. So, it's one of those things where we've spent such a good amount of time focusing on math. I'd hate for us to shift our focus dramatically, but there are also other content areas that we want to be mindful of as well. I know that literacy has been something that we've discussed again this year, as well as we've come a little bit further in our implementation with that. And I can imagine that moving into the future, we'll need to be thinking and talking more about elementary science as those standards get finalized in the upcoming months as well. So I don't believe we'll have any shortage of topics for professional development. It will be more a matter of coming up with a strategic approach that really sets teachers up to be as successful as possible.
I agree. I understand that there's different initiatives going on, and my interest is ensuring a sustaining state, that the support is there that's needed, and it's just not on, moving on to the next thing, I think is always a challenge for teachers. Make sure we've got the right stabilization process in place, and it as well as moving on to the other initiatives as well. So I understand that. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's helpful.
At the risk of sounding a little bit like a broken record, I just want to say that I hope that we will have some specific direction for specific sites who have a higher number of parents who are not English speaking, so that they can help their students, because it sounds like it's very significantly more parent involved. And I would hate to see us not proactively do that and continue to have a gap when we could have done some parent education on the front end to minimize that or shorten it quicker. So, that's all.
This is exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
all.
Go get some rest, teachers.
Sure they don't want to stay.
Waiting on you.
No, I'm just looking at the rest of the hardcore members of the audience.
It's our fan club over there.
So the next agenda item is the consent agenda. So board members, are there any items you would like to remove for separate consideration? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as is?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, is there any discussion? Just for everybody following along at home, the consent agenda, again, is many items that are typical: minutes, financial reports, payments, personnel items, field trips, grants, Chromebook leases, facility maintenance leases, things that have been discussed in other areas. And again, a lot of work has gone into some of the bigger items, and all the rest are standard reports that we read and go through. So that is the standard monthly piece. And calling out, there is a long-term facilities maintenance project for payment rehabilitation, and there is a Chromebook leases on the consent agenda. The two are the bigger items this time. Any other commentary? If not, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. We have a couple action items on tonight's agenda. We have several action items on tonight's agenda. And the first one is the Park Center Senior High School Parking Lot and Dome Turf Fields bid at Osseo Senior High School and at Park Center Senior High School. And with that, I'll ask Mr. Meyer to present to us.
All right, good evening, Chair Ostafi, Superintendent Bauk, members of the school board. I'm excited to be in front of you tonight to bring forth a recommendation for the award of contracts for synthetic turf fields at Osseo Senior High and Park Center Senior High, a dome structure at Park Center Senior High, and the parking lot redesign project at Park Center Senior High and Brooklyn Middle School. A little background on these projects. Approximately 1 year ago, we began discussions regarding improvements for student access to playing fields. The board gave administration direction to pursue a project to build synthetic turf fields at Osseo Senior High and Park Senior High, not to exceed $2 million per site. In the course of planning for the synthetic turf, the city of Brooklyn Park was invited into the conversation to understand how they might benefit from the additional fields proposed at Park Center. It was determined that the Brooklyn Park Recreation and Parks Department would have an interest in installing lights on the proposed fields to allow the city to program the fields after dark. During these discussions, the idea of installing a dome at Park Center was addressed, and over the past year, we have worked on creating an agreement with the city of Brooklyn Park to install a dome over one of the fields at Park Center. In addition, approximately a year ago, we began creating a parking lot redesign option that could alleviate some safety concerns and some traffic congestion challenges at Park Center and Brooklyn Middle School. At the March 4th, 2019 school board work session, the board gave direction to move forward with the redesign option using long-term facility maintenance funds as well as land proceeds funds to complete the project. Tonight, we are asking for approval of bids for contracts for each of these projects to be completed in the summer of 2019. So I want to just give a brief update on the partnership option that we have talked during work sessions about with the city of Brooklyn Park. At a special city council meeting last evening, The council members voted 7-0 to move forward on a partnership with the school district to build a dome and install lights on the Park Center High School turf. As part of the due diligence process of the decision-making, the district and city have negotiated the main pieces of a joint powers and operating agreement, and as well as a usage agreement that we've worked with our athletic team at Park Center as well as the city. So I want to take just a few minutes to go through the main elements of the joint powers and the operating agreement. You will find the full elements that we have discussed thus far that have not went through the lawyer process yet, but they're the main tenets of the joint powers agreement. It's the fourth item on the action item in the board packet. So first, looking at the overall capital investment of each entity. If we first look at the school board's responsibility, we would be responsible for the synthetic turf and the groundwork. And after bids coming in, it's just over $1.8 million at the Park Center site. In addition, we are responsible for the parking lot improvements that we discussed with that redesign, looking at some of the safety challenges and congestion challenges that we have. That's approximately just over $2.5 million. We will also have some sports operational equipment that we'll be responsible for, things like soccer nets, lacrosse nets, things like that. Those will be a part of our normal operating expenses. So our total capital cost for the project, again, this is just at Park Center, is just over $4.4 million. If we look at the city responsibility, they will first of all do the lighting and on the two fields for just under $400,000. And then they're also responsible for the dome, the footings, and the netting inside the dome, and that's just over $3 million. They plan to put about $25,000 of some operational equipment themselves that is just towards their own programming, things that the district won't necessarily utilize. So their total capital cost expenditure will be just over $3.4 million. The agreement includes the city taking dome management. So they will be responsible for the overall administration and operation. They'll do all the scheduling for the times that they have usage on it and do all the rentals. They're ultimately responsible for the overall operation. As we look towards the maintenance and the operation and who kind of pays for what, first we look at the artificial turf. So the school district, our grounds department, will provide the maintenance for the artificial turf. And so as part of the contract for the artificial turf includes the equipment that will be used to maintain that turf over time. The city is responsible for the turf lighting. So anytime that there's an issue with the actual lighting on those turf fields, the city would be responsible to contract that out and to pay for those services. Additionally, the support building, the main entrance to the dome, the city is responsible for the overarching costs if we have to hire something out. Our school district custodial staff will provide the day-to-day custodial services and general maintenance on that facility. Same with mechanical repairs. The city is responsible for the repairs outside of normal maintenance that school district staff can do. And then we've also agreed that overtime, anytime that we have to call district staff in for maintenance of any kind and any overtime that would be incurred outside of the maintenance staff's normal workday, the city would pay for that as well. So as we look at the operational expenses for the budget, anytime that we have groups in during our usage time, or anytime the city is responsible during their usage time, each entity would be responsible for the cost of the supervision during that time. Typically for the district, it would be things like our physical education teachers or coaches that would be responsible for supervision. The school district would be responsible for the day-to-day custodial and general maintenance for the dome and the turf. And then for utilities, the school district and city will split those costs 50% each, approximately $50,000 for each entity. Also, for the setup and the tear down of the dome, which will happen in the fall and then in the spring, we will share that 50% cost as well. That's approximately $40,000 for each entity that we have budgeted at this point. Because the district is sharing some of the operational costs, the city has agreed to share in what we have called the Capital Asset Replacement Fund. This is a special fund that the city will establish, and essentially the proceeds or the profits from the operation of the dome that they will do rentals will go into this fund, and it will be for replacement, capital replacement over time. So life expectancy on the turf is about 15 years, on the dome is about 20 years. So this fund will be established to pay for replacement of both of those entities. And so as we get to that place and that builds up over time, it will decrease our obligation from an LTFM perspective to replace those turf fields. So taking a look specifically at the award that we're asking for approval this evening, if we're looking at just the earthwork for the turf fields, Osseo Senior High for the turf fields and earthwork, just over $900,000. For Park Center, because we have a larger footprint there, it's just over $1 million. And then the City of Brooklyn Park would be responsible for just over $800,000. That's for the footings, for both the lights as well as for the dome structure. The second item that we're asking for approval tonight is a contract for the actual turf system as well as for the dome structure. Just under $700,000 for the turf system at Osseo Senior High. For Park Center, it's about $750,000, and then that dome structure, which the City of Brooklyn Park would ultimately pay for, is about $1.5 million. This we would contract through Sourcewell, which is formerly NJPA, and essentially this has been bid at the national level, so we can leverage this without having to go to competitive bid because it's already been competitively bid. The total there is just under $3 million. So we'll take a look again, and we've seen these before in previous board reports and conversations that we've had. This is the south field for Osseo Senior High, and then we have the north field at Osseo Senior High. These are the two turf field that we will put into place. This is a turf field with the actual building attached that you can see on the right-hand side. This will be the building that that still needs to be bid out, so that's the one element that has not been bid through this. We do believe that we have a really solid quote and estimate for that, but that still needs to go through the design phase and then the quote process, and we would bring forth that, depending on the outcome this evening, in May for approval of that bid award. So just quickly, this is again a look at both of the turf fields at Park Center. On the left-hand side is just an image of what the inside may look like. Again, you'll see on the right hand of your screen the larger footprint. That's where the dome will go, and you'll see on the top part of that is where the building will go, as well as the mechanical and the space that the actual dome will be stored during the summer months. Here's a picture of a concept of the outside of the dome with that building attached to it. So if we look at the final, just the turf project, and again, this is what the board gave direction about a year ago to stay under $2 million per site or $4 million total. If we look at just the earthwork, we're just under $2 million. The synthetic turf is just under or just over $1.4 million, and then we have fees and contingencies wrapped into that as well. And for the final tally of $3.6 million, or just over $3.6 million. So well under our $4 million that we were tasked with staying within. Then if we shift gears to our parking lot redesign, we went out to competitive bid for this particular project. And the low bid was New Look Contracting for just over $2.4 million. Again, this is creating that new driveway coming off Regent, and that part of it is not eligible for LTFM, so that's where the $300,000 will go from the land proceeds that board gave direction on March 4th. Again, just as a reminder, this also repaves, but it also does lighting. It looks at sidewalks, wayfinding, and that's all included in the LTFM plan for that parking lot. And here you'll see a full picture of the parking lot with the 2 fields. You'll see that entryway coming off Regent next to the stadium for that parking lot redesign project. So to summarize, the board action this evening, the recommended board action is to approve the synthetic turf earthwork award to Rachel Contracting in the amount of $2.7 million, $2.764 million, to approve a contract through Sourcewell for $2.9 million, which includes our synthetic turf field as well as the dome that the City of Brooklyn Park will pay for. And then the parking lot redesign at Park Center and Brooklyn Middle to New Life Contracting for $2.442 million. So next steps, as I mentioned, we still have to go through the design phase and the bidding phase for that, that entrance that, again, the city will be responsible to as part of their capital investment. We would bring that forth to the board for approval on the May 21st board meeting. We need to formalize the joint power and operating agreements that you have the framework for, but we'll bring that forth on May 21st for action as well, for approval of that joint powers. The city is tentatively planning, and I think it's May 15th is what the city said. It's their board meeting in May that they would bring the joint powers agreement to their city council for approval as well. And then we're still hoping for substantial completion of the projects, both at Osseo as well as at Park Center by August 16th. So with that, I would entertain any questions.
All right, board members?
Since it's an action item, you need to have a motion first and then discussion and questions.
All right, we will do that. So is there a motion to approve the bid for the parking lot redesign at Park Center Senior High School, the bid for the earthwork and foundation for the dome and turf fields at Osseo Senior High School and Park Center Senior High School, and the contract for the turf and dome system at Osseo Senior High School and Park Center Senior High School?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There are several seconds. So with that, is there any discussion? Yes, there is. I want to say I want to say thank you for all your hard work over the last 6-8 weeks as this thing really blew up and started coming to fruition. And I also want to say thank the leadership of Brooklyn Park, their Parks Commission, Jay Strobel, their city manager, Mayor Lundy, and all their board members for working hard on this over that period of time and going back a year, but really jump-starting it and getting things moving over the last couple months. So I appreciate their effort. I appreciate their involvement. And appreciate their financial involvement and their partnership. This is going to be a great asset for not only the district with all the things that we can do during the day and into the early evening, but all the things that it will allow the city to do for their residents, many of whom have to drive all over the place for opportunities in a winter under a dome. And this is going to be a great thing for the city, a great thing for the community and for us. So thanks for working on it, and you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would be remiss if I did not recognize Dale Carlstrom, who's in the audience. He put a lot of time and energy and working with the city as well in putting this together really on the fly, so he did a great job, so I thank him as well.
Mr. Chair?
Let's start down there, and we'll just work our way across, because everyone's going to have a question.
I just want to make a couple of comments. Again, I want to thank you. I know you've been spending a lot of late nights working on this and working really hard, and same Dale. And I also want to thank Cheryl Staffy and Director Tanya Simons for continually showing up to the Brooklyn Park City Council meetings and advocating for us. I also want to thank Heather Sink-Miller, the principal at Park Center, and her students and the community members that came out and support to make sure that all of our kids have opportunities to do activities that, especially Phi Ed in the winter. I mean, look at Minnesota. You know, I'm really excited for them to be able to use this. So thank you very much. And I do want to ask this question for people watching. I want to thank you for working really hard not to use any money from the operating budget for these projects, that they're all based on long-term facilities maintenance and land sales and levies and et cetera. So.
And I, of course, want to, Dale and Ron and your team and the City of Brooklyn Park, thank everybody for their dedication. I think this is really important as a I grew up my whole entire life in Brooklyn Park, and so it means a lot to me to see this investment and this partnership. I think it's so important, and I think that I was just blown away by just hearing about the amount of involvement the community had, and their voice was really heard, from youth to coaches to teachers to our principal at Park Center, and I think this is just a really collaborative, and it just really shows that we are one district, and we have a lot of uniqueness, but it's like what makes us so great, and I think this is just like a huge celebration and should be recognized. So I look forward to the Joint Powers Agreement moving forward, and I just can't even believe August 16th is like going to be complete. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I would just like to recognize that it's a significant investment, and I think the board is excited and thrilled to support this project. Thanks to our fellow board members here who dedicated a lot of time out of their own schedule to advocate for us. Thanks to the City of Brooklyn Park. I know they're spending a lot of time and resources on this as well. We couldn't do it without them, so we're very grateful for that. Thank you.
Mr. Simons?
Yeah, thank you so much for the work. It's been fun to be in attendance with you guys to see all of that community output. And for all of those watching, hopefully you'll have an opportunity to watch the Brooklyn Park City Council meeting replayed. You have to see our kids go and speak about their interest in the dome and what it meant to them, and how they would benefit from it, as well as community members. So, and even 2 weeks ago at the public meeting, that it was a packed, full house, and again, the community members and the students and the staff and the coaches. So it was really remarkable. So make sure everybody goes and takes a look at that. And I really am excited as a resident of Brooklyn Park at this particular partnership and the benefit both for that city and for our district and the students across the district, as well as the students across Brooklyn Park. So this is really exciting. And in particular, seeing the 7-0 vote last night and the comments from the city council members and the mayor was very impactful too. So I'm really excited about this collaboration. Thank you.
And I think anyone who says that their voice doesn't matter should watch that city council meeting, because the kids, our students, did such a great job representing their interests and their passions and their school. And it had an effect on one particular city council member who changed their decision after hearing them. So it was great.
And real quick on that, I think it's very difficult to get a teenager to speak to their parents, let alone a room full of adults sitting up at the dais and on TV. And I don't even know if they realize that. But that was something else.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's been working on it, especially Ron and Dale. You guys have put in a lot of time and effort, and we really appreciate it. Dr. Kate McGuire, former superintendent, brought this to the board shortly before her retirement, and the fact that we have come so far in such a short period of time is a huge testament to the work that you've put in and how important this is to our entire community and school district. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone and echo all the things that all of my board members have said. So thank you.
Okay.
Don't stop at that. Can I, may I?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I didn't.
Go right ahead.
I was patting backs here. I just wanted to mention 2 additional people, John Hedstrom, our activities coordinator at Park Center, and Sarah Vernig, who oversees all the district activities and their involvement in this project. And then just echo, as I've been involved in this kind of work for 25 years, worked with probably somewhere between 20 to 25 different cities in that career, actually a career of 41 years. This comes as close to a real true partnership on the operating side and the capital side versus having this slanted where one entity is picking up more of the costs than the other. And so hats off, Ron, Dale, Heather, John, Sarah, all, the two board members that got involved here at the end too, and the city council and everyone else. It took everyone's work, and it took a little, kind of bumping along the way, but that's all part of the process. And we got to a great victory in the end. And so I'm just really tickled with this end result. So thank you, board, for hanging in there with us.
Yes.
And also pushing us a little bit at the same time, saying let's not give up on this. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? No, with that, now we get to vote. So all in favor of accepting the bids as outlined previously, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. All right, next up is the recommendation for approval for the 2019-2020 medical insurance rate renewal. And with that, Laurel Anderson.
School board action is a recommendation for approval for rate increases for the Preferred One health insurance premiums effective July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. Based on our health insurance reserve fund balance, plan usage rates, and our continued priority of building and maintaining a strong fund reserve balance, we're recommending an overall 5.7% increase to our monthly premiums for fiscal year 2019-2020. Specific percentage increases to our monthly premiums will be based on the individual plan at the high level, value, and HSA. Those individual rate increases are outlined in the memo that you have received tonight. School board members have had an opportunity to review the proposed rate changes, to ask questions, and to consider financial implications. It's the superintendent's recommendation that you approve the Preferred One insurance renewal rates presented to you this evening.
Okay, directors, is there a motion to approve the 2019-2020 medical insurance rates as proposed by Ms. Anderson and outlined in the memo?
So moved.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Is there any discussion? Any questions or comments? I know we've gone through this quite a bit during work sessions and during other items, so I don't have any other questions on that. I know we're trying to build up, be financially responsible, building up a good balance. So as insurance goes, there are, catastrophes and good years, and we want to build up so that we are doing ourselves well and our citizens well, so that we don't have to dip into other funds. So with that, any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. And the next action is the second reading of Policy 524, Technology and Acceptable Use by Students. With that, Mr. Palmetier.
Thank you, Chair Estaffi. I want to go on record as saying that my action items aren't nearly as interesting as Ron's, and maybe not even as interesting as Laurel's. So it's a hard, I didn't hear that comment. Okay. I don't know, I can't promise short. Thank you, Chair Estaffi, school board members, Superintendent Bauk, cabinet members. A rewrite of Policy 441 and a repeal of Policy 524 are action items on tonight's agenda. I will clarify that the agenda does say second reading for Policy 524, but that is indicating of a repeal. The first reading of these aforementioned policies was at a regular board meeting on March 19th, 2019. At least 4 weeks have passed since the first reading of these policies. And under school board policy and procedure, if approved by the board this evening, the revised policies will be adopted. First, I'll take the rewrite of Policy 441, Technology and Internet Acceptable Use by Staff. This policy was last revised in July of 2014. Under the Children's Internet Protection Act, or CIPA, public schools are required to adopt a policy of this nature. The proposed rewritten policy combines current Policy 441 and 524 into one policy, establishing one acceptable use policy instead of two separate policies for employees and students, eliminates redundancy and provides greater clarity for the district's management of its technology. This approach is also consistent with MSBA policy, model policy. As discussed during the first reading of this policy in March, Policy 441 includes the following substantive modification. It includes the definition sections to better identify the scope of systems and technologies covered by the policy. It adds a section on security, which establishes specific use expectations on matters such as password protection and the use and acquisition of outside digital resources in order to maintain the integrity of the district systems and technology. It adds a section on internet safety to help better ensure compliance with SIPA standards. It elaborates and provides further clarity on the types of uses that are specifically prohibited. It adds a section that sets forth the limited privacy expectation that users have when using district systems and technologies. It adds a section on social media use that clarifies the acceptable use standards that apply to school-related social media use and that requires developments of guidelines in the proper use of social media by employees. And it includes a disclaimer language clarifying that the district will not be held responsible for unauthorized uses of district systems and technologies. I will note that since the first reading, we did receive some feedback on the proposed policy, and the revised or the current iteration of the policy is before the board tonight. We have proposed specifically modifications to Section 7A of the policy, which really pertains to prohibited uses of district technology. First, we addressed a concern that paragraph A6 of this section, which pertains to posting of private data on outside websites, applied too broadly to all users, and we wanted to narrow that to employees in this instance. We also added a provision that prohibits student use on district technology and systems in the manner that invades the privacy interests of others. Third, we clarified that the district policy would also comply, or that this policy also incorporates by reference essentially the district harassment policy, Policy 413. And finally, to ensure compliance with the opinions of the Minnesota Attorney General and applicable election laws, we included a prohibition against using school district systems or technologies to advocate for or against a ballot question or election issue. And then I will take the repeal of 524, if you allow me. This policy is being proposed for repeal. As previously stated, the provisions of Policy 524 are incorporated into the revised Policy 441. As a result, it's proposed that this policy be repealed. And with that, I'll turn the agenda back to the chair for proposed action on this policy.
Okay, so with that, we'll go with the action item is to repeal Policy 524, Technology and Acceptable Use by Students. Is there a motion to repeal Policy 524?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Is there any discussion on repealing 524? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. So the next action, which is part and parcel of this, is the second reading of Policy 441, Digital Technologies and Digital Systems for Acceptable Use, which incorporates parts of 524. Is there a motion to approve the second reading of Policy 441, Digital Technologies and Digital Systems Acceptable Use?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, is there any discussion? One thing I wanted to ask, since it popped up here in the latest draft, is saying that you cannot use district resources to disclose private information such as addresses or telephone numbers of students. So if Jim asked Bill for Pete's phone number, that's illegal if they send it on their phone when they're connected to Wi-Fi?
So are we talking, I guess, in clarification for the question, are we talking about staff members sharing information? Are we talking about students, or in what paragraph are you referencing, Chair
Where are
Stoll?
we at? We're in 7. Students are prohibited from using the school district systems and technology in a manner that invades the privacy of others or compromises other users' credentials. This includes, but is not limited to, disclosing private information such as addresses, telephone numbers, ID numbers, account numbers, access codes, or passwords. Now, I understand the majority of that, but to say that you can't give a friend's phone number or their address seems to be a bit of a problem.
Yeah. If I can address that, I don't certainly it's not the intent of the policy to prohibit students, say, for example, who are using district Wi-Fi from sharing information of that nature. In part, one of the reasons that we stepped back on paragraph 6 in terms of sharing information and applying that to all users was a concern that was raised actually by you, Chair Astafi. I will say that at least as it relates to number 7, the intent was to address, I think, the more problematic issues of sharing of identification numbers, account numbers, and access to passcodes. So for example, we know that for when a student accesses or when an employee accesses the system and uses a passcode, the need to actually preserve the I guess, security and anonymity of those passwords is critical. I understand the question as it relates to addresses and telephone numbers, and certainly the intent of the policy is not to prevent students from sharing information when they happen to be using district Wi-Fi as well.
And I would say the other intent around that is around the invasion of privacy. So it comes around consent. So a student knowingly shares information about another student without their consent and publicly posting that of this student did this and they live at this address, as opposed to, Billy, can I have your number so we can have conversations and form a study group? So the intent around there is around invasion of privacy and protection of students who don't want their information disclosed.
I understand that, but the clear language of this says you can't share addresses and phone numbers on district resources. I understand, people want to, hey, I need his phone number so I can text him about a homework problem, or et cetera. So those things seem to be day to day. Saying that, hey, here's where this person lives and this is what they did, that would tend to fall under harassment. If it's if you're harassing somebody, you want to get back at them by publishing that information. But I don't. If you say invades the privacy of others or compromises other users' credentials, the invading the privacy of sort of falls onto the person who was given or had their phone number given out innocuously to somebody who had a question on math. I guess I just want to make sure that that isn't going to be punished.
Would it help if the language said, this may include? Because in certain situations, it may include that.
I can
Instead of-
address that. I think actually, from my perspective, that gives the administration discretion to address issues where there's a potential, invasion of privacy concern. Certainly, I will tell you that I would never advise any building administrator to take an action based on what you were suggesting as far as sharing information, Chair Astafi. So may certainly provides permissiveness and discretion in implementation. I will say to add to Anthony's point, I mean, implicit in all this is that when a student does share information, at least in the example that you gave, would be some sort of tacit acceptance that information, for example, address information, and that information would be shared. Again, I think putting in language which just says may gets us there.
I'd also like to say that the policy does say in a manner that invades, and to me, I read that it's open to interpretation by those enforcing the policy. So I think we need something in policy language that protects student data privacy, and this is the language that does it.
And after, a good point there, and after Anthony had redirected my attention that, reread that again for the 5th time, but invades the privacy of others or compromises, it's probably not an invasion of privacy, and you're right, I don't think any administrator would take it that way. So after all of that, I'm fine with this.
Even better.
Works for me.
All right, so any other questions or comments on the entire policy? With that, all in favor of accepting the motion to approve the second reading of policy 441, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. And always the fun piece of the night. The final action item is the recommendation to accept gifts to the district totaling $135,536.51. Is there a motion to accept those gifts?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion?
Thank you.
We have many PTOs. I'm just going through booster clubs, Great River Energy, Boston Scientific, Passion Church, people who are giving a lot and giving all the time, and a lot of others in there. Carol Newman for the Ralph G. Newman Memorial Scholarship at Osseo Senior High is just one of many. Please go online and read the 50-some gifts that are given to the district, and I want to thank everybody sincerely for all of that effort. So with that, all in favor of accepting the gifts and accepting it graciously, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. So at this point, the board will be going into closed session. What?
Sir, we have one item number 10, the informational item yet.
It's not on my list.
I know it's not on yours, we kept it off.
Oh my gosh, we can't forget that.
I'm not hurt.
We can't forget that.
Oh, okay. All right, so information item, first reading of policy 515, protection and privacy of education records and data. Mr. Palmetier.
Thank you, Chair Estaffi, School Board Member, Superintendent Bauk. I will go on record, actually, that the second reading of Policy 441 was a little more interesting than I anticipated. And then, as it relates to the first reading of Policy 515, I'll try to keep it interesting and short, Kelly. Okay. Policy 515 was last revised in November of 2013, consistent with the requirements of the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act. This policy is subject to annual review. After review by the district's policy committee, the proposed revisions that we're presenting tonight for first reading include the following. That the proposed policy be reformatted to reflect current formatting standards. This includes adding a purpose and a general statement section. That the proposed policy remove references to appendices A through J, which refer to various forms related to implementation of the student records policy. Instead, it's being recommended that these forms accompany procedures for 515. This would give administration the discretion to make reasonable minor modifications to the applicable forms without requiring formal board action. Third, in keeping with the requirements of the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act, the proposed policy designates the responsible authority, in this case specifically the superintendent, to oversee the collection, use, and dissemination of data on students and other individuals. The revisions also delegate to the superintendent the power and responsibility to establish procedures and safeguards to ensure compliance with the law. The proposed policy specifically sets forth information under the school that the school board designates directory information on students. So under FERPA, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act of 1974, which is a federal law, and also under Minnesota Government Data Practices Act, the school district is allowed to designate certain information on students as directory information, and such information generally is of a nature where its release without the consent of the parent would not be viewed as harmful or an invasion of privacy. So the proposed policy really incorporates and maintains our current iteration and definition of directory information with some small caveats. First, it removes student addresses from the definition of directory information. And this actually surfaced at least through some concerns that administrators and other staff members were raising as it relates to the release of student addresses as per se directory information. And it also addressed district school publications and allowing the release of such data when such data would not be objectively viewed as harmful or an invasion of privacy. So we're talking about student newspapers and yearbooks where such information on students might just find its way in there. Directory, by designating it as such a directory information, we cover ourselves in that ground. And then finally, the proposed policy identifies specific instances where a class list, student photo, or a student's address can be released only to certain persons for limited purposes. This includes situations where a parent of a student in a classroom can be provided a class list, for example, or a photo of the class. It also permits limited disclosure of student addresses in some situations where we receive such requests. So, for example, we get state legislators, congresspersons wanting to congratulate a student for obtaining National Honor Society. That would be a legitimate request for data where we would release the address information. And then similarly, where a school community organization is seeking a list of addresses for families to provide information on a school referendum or ballot question, Those issues do come up from time to time, and those requests would certainly impact the school and could be released under the proposed policy. First reading begins a 4-week period for reaction to the proposed policy changes by concerned groups or individuals. After a 4-week period, the school board may adopt, repeal, or amend the policy after second reading. The proposed policies are available on the school district website with the agenda for this meeting. Comments on the policy discussed here tonight may be directed to the school board or myself. Comments on these policies may also be provided online through School Board Policies and Procedures website, which is located on the district website. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Palmetier. With that, the board will now be going into closed session. Is there a motion to recess the regular meeting for 5 to 10 minutes and reconvene in room N10 for the purpose of a closed meeting of the school board pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.03 to consider strategy, parameters, and developments in labor negotiations for the following bargaining groups: directors and confidential managers, licensed coordinators, management personnel I through M, principals, salaried professionals, school executives, and teachers. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. All in favor? Is there any discussion? All in favor for taking a recess and reconvening in closed session, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are recessed.